Hello. Um, I'm pivoting and going to talk on a different topic tonight, but one which is becoming very relevant. This is the topic of Africa and the coup that has just occurred in Niger. For those of you who are watching this, I'll just put up a map here on the screen so we can have a look here. Niger in central North Africa, considered to be part of West Africa. A coup occurred on the 26th of July when the democratically elected leader Mohamed Omar Bazoum was ousted by General Abdourahmane Tchiani and has proclaimed himself as the new leader of Niger. This is a military coup. Mohamed Bazoum, the previous leader, has been held by the military ever since. So he's been held for the last few days. The importance of these events could be very large, given that the country of Niger is a past French colony. So in the 1890s, the French began assuming some control over Niger, and it was really in the southern sort of half of Niger is where the French control started. And then in 1922, there was an official formal declaration of the colony of Niger. Now, French colonial rule existed until 1960, when Niger declared independence from France. Interestingly, Niger banned slavery in 1960 after the French they declared independence from the French. Now, I must admit, some of the names of the people in this, and what I'm going to report on tonight, I'm going to get wrong because this is new. Africa is not an area that I normally spend a great deal of time on, but somewhere which I will in the future. So hopefully my pronunciation of names and places will get better over time. Now, the importance here could be very, very high because France still extracts a lot of gold and uranium from Niger. Now, gold obviously very valuable, but uranium becoming more and more valuable to the French as it is a source of nuclear power for electricity generation from France's nuclear production facilities. Obviously, if those supplies are threatened, then France's power supply is threatened. And given what's going on at the moment in Europe with the sanctions, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, there are increased risks around energy in Europe due to the inability to easily access what was the cheap Russian oil and gas. Now, Niger have placed an embargo upon the export of gold and uranium. Now, this has led to reports by the French that they are preparing to take military action against Niger to regain access to the uranium that is there. Interestingly, Charlie Hebdo, the French cartoon group, a number of years ago were embroiled in a dispute over the Islamic prophet Mohamed, which resulted in the death of a number of their staff members. But they have released a cartoon today showing the French ambassador to Niger under his desk as rocks are being thrown through the windows by rioters outside. And his comment is, as he picks up one of the rocks to inspect it, if only it were uranium. So clearly having a dig that France's primary interests in Niger is the uranium that it takes from Niger. Now, some interesting things going on in the adjoining country of Mali. Mali, which is to the west of Niger, the Wagner fighters are located there. So the Wagner fighters who were involved in the claiming and the occupation of Bakhmut or Artyomsk in Ukraine have been located for some time in Mali. Now, interestingly, the character who just won't stay out of news events these days, Yevgeny Prigozhyn, when the coup occurred, reportedly announced that his Wagner fighters, if required, could help the new government with any terrorist activity that they may have to deal with. I think that Yevgeny Prigozhin's terrorist term here was actually in his parlance a reference to the West and perhaps the French, who he believed would be making moves to secure their uranium supplies. Now, the US have troops in Niger. They have a couple of bases there and about 1,000 permanent troops. I believe the French have another 1,500 to 2,000 troops in the country. There has been reprisals after Niger suspended the export of gold and uranium. The EU's Joseph Borrell, who's the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, has said the EU will immediately withdraw budgetary support for Niger, which is around $2 billion in EU, French and US subsidies that will be stopped. I've seen some other reporting that the exports of Niger are about 2.3 billion per year. Their imports are about 3 billion, and they get somewhere between 2 and 3 billion in subsidies. So if those subsidies do stop, that will have a financial impact. On the other hand, there may be the ability for Niger to then sell its uranium elsewhere, perhaps at a better price than what it sells it to the French. So this is sort of a developing situation. Over the coming days, we will learn more of what is happening there. Niger, though, is receiving support from other nations. Mali and Burkina Faso, Mali just to the west, and Burkina Faso again to the west and just south of Mali, but bordering with Niger. They both announced support for Niger. They are all very resentful of their previous French colonization, and they have warned ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States. This is a grouping of trading partners, West African states that work together. Both Mali and Burkina Faso have indicated that they will leave the ECOWAS community if military intervention in Niger proceeds. There's a comment from the military spokesman, which is Colonel Amadou Abdourahmane. He said the objective of the ECOWAS meeting is to approve a plan of aggression against Niger through an imminent military intervention in Niamey, the capital, in collaboration with other African nations that are non-members of ECOWAS and certain Western countries. So what he is suggesting here is that there is a threat from Western countries, likely Britain and France, who are speaking about military intervention. Now, there's additional support today. Algeria and Guinea. Guinea is further to the west, right on the west coast, not adjoining Niger, and Algeria, which is a larger country to the north of Niger, reaches up above Malta into the Mediterranean Sea. Both Algeria and Guinea have indicated they will join a fight on Niger's side if there is French aggression. Now, the combined population between Algeria, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger is somewhere over 85 million people. So it's a considerable amount of people if a conflict were to erupt here. Obviously, the military in these nations isn't going to be as strong compared to, say, the US or French military. However, the US and French have got themselves into a position at the moment where they are stretched. They are expending a lot of material, effort, and money on their conflict with Russia in Ukraine at the moment, and any further conflict in Africa, which would stretch them further, is likely to push them to some sort of a decision point, or perhaps hamper their ability to operate as they may wish to in Africa. Note also that there are about 4 million African refugees in France at the moment. So one could imagine that given France's already volatile climate after the widespread rioting that occurred a month ago due to the police shooting of a 70-year-old boy who was detained in a traffic incident, additional protests prior to that due to the French legislation to raise the retirement age, and further problems they have with their legislation around how they might address or normalise migrants in the country to allow them to rapidly receive benefits of living in the country. With that as a base, if there were to be military conflict in Niger between the French and the forces of Niger and their surrounding nations who have agreed to partner and support them, then one could imagine that this would rapidly inflame tensions in France itself. In many of those African migrants there whose home countries may be from these ones involved in the conflict, or who would feel solidarity as Africans with people in Niger. So this is definitely something to watch. I will start to put some reports out on this African topic as well as the Ukrainian topic. It's interesting that on one hand we've got France now threatening military strikes in Niger. On the other hand, Russia has just been through a series of meetings with African leaders, and by all accounts, they have been very positive talks of future partnership and development with African nations. At the same time, we've got US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spending time in the Pacific with Australia and New Zealand, shoring up support for the West there. So it certainly feels as though battle lines are being drawn, allegiances are being tested, new allegiances are being formed. We see the BRICS growing in popularity with reportedly 20 other nations looking to join the BRICS trading group. Saudi Arabia, perhaps the most influential of those at the moment, looking at joining. So if things were to continue this way, if a conflict were to erupt in West Africa, and a sizable one involving multiple nations, and with the conflict directly with the West in terms of France and perhaps Britain being brought into that, then we are approaching what could spill over into a real third world war, where the conflict in Europe is it's already on very shaky ground, where there were reports yesterday of 2 Belarusian helicopters that were on maneuvers who allegedly flew over the Polish border. Originally, the Poles denied that there had been an intrusion into their airspace by the Belarus helicopters. Then later in the day, there was a retraction, and the Polish claimed that yes, there had been two helicopters, but they'd flown so low they had gone under Polish radar. I did think to myself that mightn't be the sort of explanation you wanted to be giving for why you were changing your story, that you'd effectively just indicated to the Belarusians that if you keep your heads down, you can fly under our radar. Maybe they knew that already, but we can see how that's very close. That could easily erupt. If something were to happen there that brought Poland into the conflict, we could soon have NATO involved in a war with Russia, and then another war the West would be trying to fight in Africa. And then who knows? That might be the perfect opportunity, if China wished to assume full control of Taiwan. I'm not saying that that's what China wants to do in a military sense, but if they chose to at that time, and America then decided to defend there, we would find ourselves effectively in the situation of a world war. All right. Thanks for watching this. I will keep posting some videos on this topic. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel, and I hope you're enjoying it. I'll talk to you soon.